First contact's price. The quantum resonance detector aboard the UES Hawking wasn't supposed to be active during routine solar wind measurements. Dr. Sarah Chen had simply forgotten to switch it off after her last experiment. This oversight would change humanity's destiny forever. Dr. Chen. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice crackled through the lab's intercom. We're getting some unusual readings from your equipment. Mind taking a look? Sarah frowned at the interruption, her dark eyes shifting from her data tablets to the detector's holographic display. The normally stable quantum field measurements were oscillating in patterns she'd never seen before. That's impossible, she whispered, fingers flying across the haptic interface. These are artificially generated quantum signatures. Within hours, the Hawking's bridge was crowded with the ship's senior staff. Captain Maya Torres stood with her arms crossed, watching the repeating signal pattern on the main display. You're certain this isn't a malfunction, Doctor? Absolutely certain, Sarah replied, pointing to specific peaks in the wavelength. These patterns show clear signs of intelligent design. They're too precise, too structured to be natural phenomena. And they're coming from the Kuiper Belt. The discovery sent shockwaves through Earth's scientific community. Humanity had searched for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence for centuries, and now, just as they'd begun to lose hope, proof had literally fallen into their laps. The signal was eventually traced to what appeared to be a small spacecraft, barely larger than a terrestrial shuttle, hidden among the ice and rock at the edge of the solar system. 3 months later, the UES Magellan became the first human vessel specifically designed for first contact. Captain Torres had been given command, with Dr. Chen serving as chief sinologist. As they approached the source of the signal, the crew's excitement was tempered by rigid professionalism and countless hours of first contact protocols. The alien vessel was a marvel of engineering, all smooth curves and iridescent materials that seemed to shift colors in the starlight. It bore obvious battle damage, with sections of its hull torn open to the vacuum of space. When they finally established communication, the story that emerged was both fascinating and terrifying. The vessel belonged to a species called the Arxer, peaceful explorers who had been fleeing from an expansionist empire known as the Vanguard. The Arxer were part of a loose coalition of spacefaring races who had refused to submit to Vanguard rule, preferring to maintain their cultural independence. The price of this defiance was genocide. We chose this system because we detected no signs of advanced technology, explained Ixel, the Arxer captain, through the translation matrix. Their crystalline body structure sparkled as they gestured with multiple appendages. We hoped to repair our ship in peace. We never expected to find an emerging spacefaring race. Captain Torres leaned forward in her chair. Your pursuers, these Vanguard, how much of a threat do they pose? They are. Ixel's crystalline structure dimmed noticeably. They are relentless. They view all other species as resources to be exploited or threats to be eliminated. Their technology is centuries ahead of yours. They will not ignore your existence now that we have made contact. The warning proved prophetic. The Vanguard arrival was heralded not by ships, but by a quantum pulse that fried every electronic system on both vessels. As the Magellan's backup systems struggled to come online, massive warships emerged from fold space. Angular, aggressive shapes that seemed to devour the starlight rather than reflect it. You harbor fugitives from Vanguard Justice, a cold voice announced across all frequencies. Surrender them and submit to evaluation for potential integration into the Empire. Resistance will result in immediate termination. Captain Torres didn't hesitate. This is Captain Maya Torres of the United Earth ship Magellan. The Arxer vessel is under our protection. We do not recognize your authority in this system or over any other species. We will not surrender them or ourselves. The response came in the form of a particle beam that sliced through the Magellan's hull like paper. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as atmosphere vented into space. Torres ordered immediate evacuation, but the Vanguard ships were targeting escape pods with brutal efficiency. In her last transmission to Earth, as the bridge burned around her, Torres' voice remained steady. They see us as primitive, weak. Their arrogance will be their undoing. Humanity won't bow to tyrants, no matter how advanced they claim to be. We've spent our entire history overcoming impossible odds. Send this to every government, every military command. The vanguard is coming, but they have no idea what they're about to face. The destruction of the Magellan marked humanity's first contact with the broader galactic community. It would not be the last. As the vanguard would soon learn, humans had millennia of experience turning technologically superior opponents' strengths against them. The Empire had just made the fatal mistake of assuming that technological advancement equated to tactical supremacy. They were about to learn otherwise. The silent defense. General Marcus Way stood in the underground command center beneath the Himalayas, watching as delegates from every major nation filed into the emergency session. The holographic display at the center of the room showed the last images transmitted by the Magellan before its destruction. 3 months had passed since that fatal first contact, and humanity had not wasted a single day. The vanguard expects us to either surrender or attempt to match their technology directly. Way addressed the assembled leaders, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. They've conquered dozens of civilizations using this same pattern. But we're going to do something they've never encountered before. We're going to embrace our supposed primitive status. Dr. Sarah Chen, one of the few survivors from the Magellan, stepped forward. The burns on her face had barely healed, but her eyes blazed with determination. The quantum pulse that disabled our ships. We've analyzed it. The vanguard uses incredibly advanced technology, but they rely on it completely. They've forgotten the basics, the fundamental principles that led to their current level of advancement. Screens around the room lit up with schematics. We're not going to try to match their quantum communications. We're going back to radio and fiber optics. Their energy weapons are devastating, but they've forgotten about simple kinetic principles. Most importantly, they have no concept of intentional technological regression as a tactical choice. The Australian Prime Minister leaned forward. You're suggesting we deliberately use inferior technology. No, White corrected. We're suggesting we use appropriate technology. The Vanguard's weapons are designed to counter other advanced civilizations. Their sensors are calibrated for quantum signatures and energy readings that match their level of development. But what happens when you're looking for a star and someone hits you with a stone? The next hour detailed humanity's unprecedented plan. Every nation would contribute their resources and expertise to a strategy that would turn their technological gap into an advantage. Solar-powered factories were buried deep underground, producing weapons that combined primitive mechanical systems with cutting-edge innovations in ways the vanguard would never expect. The Arxer survivors provided crucial intelligence. The vanguard's greatest weakness is their absolute conviction in their superiority, explained Ixel, their crystalline form now integrated with an Earth-designed support structure. They don't adapt because they believe they've achieved the peak of possible development. They haven't fought a truly defensive war in millennia. Preparation transformed the Earth. Cities were hardened and camouflaged. Critical infrastructure was moved underground. The surface was rigged with millions of simple mechanical traps and misdirections. Quantum signature generators were placed in obvious locations, while humanity's real defensive installations were masked by technology that would appear primitive to Vanguard sensors. The first test came when Vanguard scout ships entered the solar system. They moved with absolute confidence, clearly visible to Earth's tracking systems. But when they activated their scanning equipment, they found exactly what humanity wanted them to see: scattered settlements with obvious energy signatures, seemingly primitive defensive installations, and apparent attempts to hide important facilities underground. What they didn't detect were the thousands of kinetic launch platforms hidden in plain sight, disguised as industrial equipment. They missed the network of analog communication systems that carry humanity's real messages beneath the obvious digital traffic. Most importantly, they failed to recognize that every obvious target was a carefully crafted decoy. They're following the exact pattern Ixel predicted, Way reported to the United Earth Defense Council. Their scans show them a primitive civilization scrambling to prepare for invasion. Everything they see reinforces their preconceptions. They're not even looking for deception because they don't believe we're capable of it. Sarah studied the scout ship's movement patterns. They're focusing entirely on our apparent power centers and military installations. Not one of them has investigated our primitive industrial sectors. They don't consider 20th century technology worth their attention. The council chamber was silent as they watched the Vanguard scouts complete their survey and depart. Everyone knew what would come next. The invasion fleet would arrive soon. Confident in their complete understanding of Earth's defenses, they would expect either submission or a futile attempt at resistance using inferior copies of their own technology. All defense sectors report ready, Wei announced. Decoy targets are in place. Real installation shows 0 quantum signatures. The surface looks exactly like what they expect to find. A primitive civilization with a few stolen pieces of advanced technology. Sarah touched the scars on her face, remembering the Magellan's destruction. They thought that attack would break our spirit, show us the futility of resistance. Instead, it showed us exactly what we needed to know about them. Their arrogance isn't just a cultural trait, it's a strategic weakness. As humanity waited for the invasion, there was no fear in the command center. The Vanguard was about to learn what countless others throughout human history had discovered too late. There is nothing more dangerous than an intelligent enemy you've underestimated. The coming battle would be decided not by technological superiority, but by humanity's greatest weapons: innovation, adaptability, and the absolute refusal to submit. Adaptive warfare. The Vanguard invasion fleet emerged from fold space exactly where humanity expected, directly above Earth's most obvious defensive installations. 5 massive dreadnoughts, each flanked by dozens of smaller vessels, took up attack positions with mathematical precision. Their angular forms blotted out the stars, energy weapons already charging for what they assumed would be a swift and decisive victory. In the Himalayan command center, General Wei watched the formation with grim satisfaction. Right into position. Commence Operation Honeypot. The Vanguard's first broadcast was predictably arrogant. Primitive species, your pitiful attempts at defense have been analyzed and found insufficient. Submit to immediate integration or face extinction. You have 1 planetary rotation to comply. Dr. Chen, monitoring the quantum frequency bands, nodded to Wei. They're scanning exactly as predicted, focusing entirely on energy signatures and quantum emissions. The decoys are drawing all their attention. Around the world, humanity's real defense grid remained invisible to the Vanguard's advanced sensors. Mechanical computing systems, running on principles the aliens had long since abandoned as obsolete, coordinated the response. The surface installations, empty shells rigged with minimal power signatures, continued broadcasting obvious activity. The Vanguard commander's patience lasted exactly 6 hours before the first attack began. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, precisely targeting what they believed to be Earth's primary defense centers. The destruction was spectacular, exactly as planned. All decoy sites reporting successful detonation protocols. Wei announced. They think they're destroying our capability to resist. Signal the counterstrike. Across Earth's surface, thousands of seemingly primitive industrial structures suddenly revealed their true nature. Rail guns, powered by simple electromagnetic principles, the Vanguard had dismissed as beneath notice, launched clouds of kinetic projectiles at the invasion fleet. The aliens' energy shields, calibrated to stop advanced weapons, proved surprisingly vulnerable to simple tungsten rods moving at hypersonic speeds. The first volley caught 3 destroyer-class ships completely off guard. Their shields flared brilliantly against the initial impacts, then failed catastrophically as the sheer volume of projectiles overwhelmed their energy-based defenses. The ship's hulls, optimized to resist energy weapons, crumpled under the kinetic barrage. Impossible. The Vanguard commander's transmission betrayed the first hint of uncertainty. Your technology is insufficient for this level of coordination. Sarah allowed herself a small smile as she monitored the quantum bands. "They're trying to locate our command and control systems. They're still looking for advanced technology signatures. They can't believe we're doing this with primitive methods." The next phase revealed another surprise. As the Vanguard fleet maneuvered to avoid the kinetic barrage, they discovered that Earth's atmosphere had been seeded with clouds of microscopic carbon particles, invisible to their quantum sensors, but devastating to their ship's advanced propulsion systems. Ships that attempted to enter the atmosphere found their engines clogged and failing. But humanity's greatest advantage proved to be speed of adaptation. While the Vanguard struggled to adjust their tactics to these unexpected threats, Earth's defenders were already implementing countermeasures to the aliens' responses. When the invaders attempted to target the rail gun installations, they found the facilities had already been abandoned, with new ones activated in different locations. "They're falling into standard response patterns," Ixel observed from their station. "The Vanguard hasn't had to innovate in combat for so long. They've lost the ability. They're cycling through pre-programmed tactical responses, looking for one that matches this situation." The space around Earth became a graveyard of Vanguard ships, not destroyed by superior technology, but by the simple physics they'd forgotten to defend against. When they attempted to jam Earth's communications, they found their quantum interference had no effect on the old-style radio and optical signals carrying humanity's real commands. A particularly devastating blow came when several human ships, appearing to flee in panic, suddenly released clouds of what seemed to be space debris. The Vanguard sensors dismissed the clouds as trash until they revealed themselves to be swarms of mini-satellites. These crude but effective devices attached themselves to the hulls of the alien ships, using simple mechanical drills to breach their armor and inject basic chemical compounds that wreaked havoc on their advanced systems. By the 18th hour of battle, the Vanguard fleet had lost a third of its ships. Their formations, once perfect, had devolved into chaos as they tried to counter attacks coming from directions and in forms their tactical computers had never been programmed to expect. "They're calling for reinforcements," Sarah reported, intercepting quantum communications. "But listen to this, they're having trouble explaining how they're losing. Their command structure literally doesn't have terminology for being defeated by primitive technology." We studied the tactical display, watching as another Vanguard destroyer succumbed to what was essentially a modernized version of World War I flak. Humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to improvise, to take what works and discard what doesn't, regardless of how advanced it might be. We're not fighting the way they expect us to fight because we're not trying to prove we're their equals. We're simply trying to win. As the first day of battle drew to a close, the Vanguard fleet retreated to a higher orbit to regroup. They had expected to find a primitive species helpless before their advanced technology. Instead, they had found an enemy that turned their every advantage into a weakness, using the very simplicity of their weapons to bypass sophisticated defenses. The battle for Earth was far from over, but humanity had proven something crucial. Sometimes the most effective response to overwhelming force isn't to match it, but to change the rules of engagement entirely. The Vanguard was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Breaking point. 3 weeks into the war, the Vanguard's reinforcement fleet arrived, twice the size of the first invasion force. But this time, they faced a humanity that had grown even more dangerous through experience. Each failed attack had provided valuable data about Vanguard technology and tactics, and Earth's defenders had spent every moment adapting and improving their countermeasures. "Their command structure is fracturing," Dr. Sarah Chen reported, studying intercepted communications from her new station in the Mobile Command Center. After the Vanguard's third attempt to locate and destroy Earth's leadership, the entire command structure had become nomadic, operating from constantly moving underground facilities. They're arguing about how to proceed. The junior commanders want to try new tactics, but the senior officers are insisting on following standard protocols. General Wei nodded, watching the tactical display as another wave of Vanguard ships moved into attack position. Ixel was right. They'd lost the ability to innovate. Their hierarchy is too rigid, too dependent on proven methods. They can't adapt without permission from superiors who don't believe adaptation is necessary. The Vanguard's latest assault followed their established pattern. Overwhelming force applied to what their sensors indicated were Earth's strongest defensive positions, but humanity had learned to use this predictability against them. Each fortress they destroyed was another trap, each apparent victory revealing itself as a carefully planned ambush. New tactic deployed in Sector 7. Lieutenant Maria Patel announced from her communication station. Vanguard ships are pursuing what they think is a retreating defense force. Actual status. Bait Force reports optimal positioning, came the response. Operation Trojan Horse is go. The retreating human ships, actually automated drones carrying minimal crews, had led their pursuers into a field of seemingly random space debris. The Vanguard sensors, designed to detect advanced technology, completely missed the simple mechanical triggers scattered throughout the field. As their ships passed through, these triggers activated, creating a cascade of chain reactions that launched thousands of miniature kinetic projectiles. The result was devastating. Vanguard shields, still optimized for energy weapons, couldn't adapt quickly enough to stop the barrage. Ships began breaking apart, their crews caught completely off guard by an attack that their tactical computers insisted shouldn't be effective. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. IXL, monitoring the Vanguard's command channel frequencies, suddenly straightened in their support frame. They're experiencing something I've never seen before. Their command structure is experiencing cascade failure. Sarah moved to IXL's station, studying the quantum communications. The Vanguard's rigid hierarchy was collapsing under the strain of repeated failures. Junior officers, faced with situations their training never prepared them for, were beginning to question orders. Senior commanders, unable to explain or counter humanity's primitive tactics, were losing authority. This is why they haven't faced a serious challenge in so long, Sarah realized. Their entire civilization is built on the assumption of technological supremacy. When that assumption fails, they don't know how to handle it. They're experiencing something like a collective psychological crisis. We immediately grasped the implications. Then we pushed that advantage. Lieutenant Patel, signal all commands. Initiate protocol chaos. Around the world, Earth's defenders launched a coordinated effort to exploit this weakness. Every engagement was now designed not just to inflict physical damage, but to challenge the Vanguard's fundamental assumptions about warfare and technology. Simple radio-controlled drones slipped through sophisticated sensor networks. Mechanical computing systems outmaneuvered quantum predictive algorithms. Crude chemical rockets carried devastating payloads past energy shields calibrated for plasma weapons. Each success further eroded the Vanguard's confidence in their technological superiority. The breaking point came during what became known as the Battle of the Pacific Rim. A Vanguard dreadnought, attempting to destroy what it thought was a major command center in the Mariana Trench, was ambushed by what appeared to be a fleet of primitive nuclear submarines. The alien crew, unable to believe such basic vessels could threaten them, maintained position even as their sensors reported multiple launches. They're not even trying to evade, Sarah observed, watching the data feeds. Their commanders are still insisting that primitive nuclear torpedoes can't penetrate their defenses. The torpedoes weren't nuclear at all, but rather carried a payload of engineered bacteria, another technology the Vanguard had long since abandoned as obsolete. These microscopic warriors, developed using the Arxer's biological data, began consuming the exotic materials that made up the dreadnought's hull. As the massive ship began literally dissolving in space, the Vanguard's command structure finally shattered. Ships began breaking formation. Commanders started contradicting each other's orders, and for the first time in possibly millennia, the invincible empire faced the prospect of defeat at the hands of a primitive species. "We've found their true weakness," Wei announced to the United Earth Defense Council. "It's not their technology. It's their inability to accept that their technology could fail. Every victory we achieve doesn't just destroy their ships, it destroys their worldview." The council chamber's main screen showed the Vanguard fleet in disarray, individual ships now acting independently as their command structure continued to break down. Humanity had not only survived their invasion, but had done so in a way that struck at the very foundation of their civilization. They'll either retreat, Sarah predicted, or they'll be forced to do something they haven't done in thousands of years, learn to adapt. Either way, they're not the invincible force they thought they were. And the rest of the galaxy is watching. Victory through unity. The quantum distortions that heralded the arrival of the Third Vanguard fleet were different this time. Instead of the precise, coordinated emergence patterns of previous attacks, ships appeared scattered and disorganized. The once mighty Empire had committed its last major battle group to subduing Earth, but something had fundamentally changed in their approach. They're adapting. Dr. Sarah Chen observed from the Mobile Command Center, now housed in a converted mining facility deep beneath the Australian outback. Look at their formation patterns. They're actually trying new tactics. General Wei studied the tactical display with intense focus. Desperate times force even the most rigid systems to evolve. The question is, can they adapt faster than we can? The Vanguard's new strategy became quickly apparent. Rather than targeting obvious military installations, their ships spread out to attack civilian infrastructure. They had finally realized that humanity's strength lay not in its defensive positions, but in its industrial and technological flexibility. They're learning. Ixel commented, their crystalline form pulsing with concerned colors. This is unprecedented. In all recorded history, the Vanguard has never changed its basic tactical doctrine. But humanity had anticipated even this development. The apparent civilian targets were as carefully prepared as the military ones had been. When Vanguard ships descended to attack Earth's major industrial centers, they found their targets had already been relocated, leaving behind elaborate decoys rigged with increasingly sophisticated traps. The true factories had been moved underground or underwater months ago, their power signatures masked by a combination of old and new technologies that the Vanguard sensors still struggled to penetrate. Every attempted strike against Earth's manufacturing capability simply revealed more of the aliens' own vulnerabilities. They're trying to adapt our tactics now, Sarah noted, watching as several Vanguard ships attempted to use kinetic weapons of their own. But they're doing it wrong. They're still approaching it from their technological perspective, trying to improve and complicate what should be simple. The turning point came during what would later be called the Battle of Luna. The Vanguard, attempting to deny Earth a tactical advantage, moved to establish a base on the Moon. They never detected the network of simple pressure plates and mechanical sensors that had been installed across the lunar surface, linked to electromagnetic pulse generators buried deep beneath the regolith. As the alien ships landed, they triggered a cascade of EMP bursts that overwhelmed their shields that had been modified to resist kinetic attacks but remained vulnerable to electromagnetic disruption. The entire Vanguard lunar assault force was disabled in minutes, their advanced technology rendered useless by principles they had dismissed as obsolete. The real surprise came in the aftermath. Instead of destroying the disabled ships, humanity launched a rescue operation. Teams of engineers, protected by simple mechanical spacesuits that were immune to the lingering electromagnetic interference, began evacuating the stranded Vanguard crews. "Your species makes no sense," a captured Vanguard commander insisted during debriefing. "You defeat us with primitive weapons, then risk your lives to save ours using technology we considered obsolete millennia ago. Why?" "Because that's what makes us human," Sarah replied. "We don't just adapt our technology, we adapt our thinking. Every tool, every technique, every idea is valid if it serves the purpose at hand, including mercy." The impact of this approach resonated beyond the immediate conflict. Other species that had been monitoring the war began to see humanity in a new light. Here was a civilization that had not only stopped the unstoppable Vanguard, but had done so while maintaining its ethical principles. The final act of the war played out not in battle but in negotiation. The vanguard, faced with mounting losses and the complete failure of their tactical doctrine, did something unprecedented. They opened diplomatic channels. "We have miscalculated," the Vanguard High Command transmitted. "Our assessment of your species was fundamentally flawed. We equated technological advancement with civilization's progress, failing to recognize that true advancement lies in the ability to use all available tools effectively." The peace conference, held in the neutral territory of Mars orbit, marked a historic shift in galactic politics. The Vanguard, humbled but also enlightened by their defeat, began the painful process of reforming their empire. Earth, despite its relatively primitive technology, was recognized as a major power, not for its weapons or defenses, but for its demonstrated ability to innovate and adapt. "They're already asking for technical advisors," Wei reported to the United Earth Defense Council. "Not for our advanced technology, but to learn how we maintain flexibility in our tactical thinking. They want to understand how we blend old and new techniques so effectively." Sarah, watching the Vanguard ships now peacefully orbiting alongside Earth vessels, reflected on how far both species had come. "We taught them something they had forgotten. That true strength lies not in the power of your weapons, but in the ability to question, adapt, and grow. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from destroying your enemy, but from helping them become something better." The war had changed the galaxy's balance of power, but its greatest impact was philosophical. Humanity had proven that civilization's advancement couldn't be measured solely by technological achievement. Innovation, adaptability, and the wisdom to use all available tools, these were the true markers of a species' progress. As Earth began sharing its unique approach with other civilizations, a new era of galactic cooperation emerged. The Vanguard's defeat had shown that no species had a monopoly on progress, and that sometimes the most primitive solution could be the most elegant. The stars that had once seemed to hold only threats now beckoned with possibilities. Humanity had earned its place among the spacefaring races, not by matching their technology, but by showing them a different way of thinking. In doing so, they had not just secured their own survival, they had helped forge a new understanding of what it meant to be truly advanced.